Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Gary Parker. I'm the Associate Dean for External Affairs at the Brown School at Washington University, where I also have the great privilege of serving as the director of the Clark Fox Policy Institute. The Clark Fox Policy Institute is dedicated to rapidly translating research findings into evidence-based policy that improves the lives of kids and their caretakers. And today's panel is a wonderful example of just that. We have some amazing young people here. It's part 7 of our COVID and Race series. And I'll put a link in the chat features where you can access the previous 6 parts and the upcoming 3 parts. We are facing 2 public health pandemics. We have COVID-19, and we also have the brutality of racism that's impacted our society in so many ways. And so this series really focuses on the disproportionate impact, both in terms of health and economics that are happening within communities of color. With that, I want to thank Janet Gillow, who is our Director of Professional Development. This is being produced in partnership with Open Classroom. And with that, now I'd like to hand it over to our amazing co-moderators. We have our Assistant Dean of Community Partnerships, Cynthia Williams, and the extraordinary Associate Dean, I gave you a promotion, an Associate Director of the Clark Fox Policy Institute, Atia Thurman. We'll get you there, Atia. We'll get you to that title.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for being here. It is my pleasure to be here today. Given the convergence of what Gary said, the convergence of a global health crisis and racialized violence against Black and Brown lives around the world, and particularly the United States, it's given rise to what some are calling the greatest civil rights movement of our time. And I want to acknowledge our youth are on the front line, and they're leading the charge, and they're leading us into the next era of the ways in which we will be hopefully a society that is approaching freedom and freedom from racism and oppression. So my name is Atia Thurman. I'm Associate Director of the Clark Fox Policy Institute. I want to give acknowledgement to Gary, who just spoke. Gary is the Institute's director and the executive producer of the series, COVID-19 and Race. And I want to thank Janet Gillow again. I also want to thank Maxine Clark and Bob Fox, whose vision for a more just and equitable society is backed with an unflinching commitment to bring about change for future generations. And right now we are sitting here with a group of change makers, and this is the youth of our time. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Cynthia Williams.
Thank you, Atia, and good afternoon to all of our panelists and attendees. This panel is the brainchild of our executive producer, Gary Parker, but Atia and I have really been looking forward to the energy and the wisdom that will emerge from this conversation. So we're going to launch right into it. And the question that I'd like for all of you to do right now is to introduce yourselves by sharing your name and your age. And if you'd like to identify your college or career aspirations, that will be really, really good. So if I may, I will start with you, Clarissa, and then everybody else, please just jump in. Unmute yourself.
I was muted.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Clarissa. I'm 19 years old. I'm currently an undergrad at WashU, a rising sophomore interested in pursuing a major in anthropology, global health, and environment. And my plan as of now is to pursue a master's in public health.
Ashley?
Hi, my name is Ashley Johnson-Jones. I am 16 years old, and I am currently enrolled in Crossroads College Preparatory School, where I'll be a junior in the fall.
Thank you. Caleb, would you go next, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Caleb Kemp. I'm a recent graduate from Western Illinois University with my bachelor's in broadcast communications. My aspirations and goals in life are just to, be a broadcaster and in the entertainment industry, doing a whole lot of things and eventually having a TV talk show. So that's my goals and aspirations, and I'm just glad to be here.
Absolutely. Z, would you go next, please?
Hello, my name is Azaria, but people call me Z. I am a junior at Rainier High School, but I'm also taking college classes and the full-time for the upcoming semester, and hopefully I'll get my associate's degree the same time as my high school diploma. I'm not too sure what exactly I want to do, but I know I want to be able to help people in whatever way possible.
Thank you. Omar?
Hi, my name is Omar. I'm a 16-year-old junior at Ladue Horton Watkins High School. I'm undecided as to what I want to do for my career. You know, I still got a little bit of time to think about it, but recently I've been looking into studying evolutionary psychology.
Thank you. And not last but not least, Kyra.
Hi, I'm Kyra Booker. I am 20 years old and I'm studying to be a social worker at St. Charles Community College.
Thank you.
We've got you.
Go ahead.
Eden.
My name is Eden. I'm a 16-year-old freshman at Mizzou, and I'm majoring in journalism and hopefully can go into a career about like investigative journalism or maybe even like law one day. I don't know at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go and ask the entire panel to consider this question and respond. It would be great if one of you could jump in right away. What impact has the pandemic had on you, your peers, your family members, or the community? And following up, or you can combine it, what new challenges have you had to manage because of COVID-19? Z, would you like to start?
Sure, I'd like to start.
Sure.
So the impact that the pandemic has had on me, my family, the community is pretty much just a new surrounding, a new way of living, because we've never experienced something like this where we had to be confined into our homes and not be able to socialize with our friends and have that, like I said in my COVID-19 video, that hot boy and hot girl summer. So we really have to just be more aware of our mental as well, because it really has impacted all of us in one way or another. And so what was the second question again, just to make sure?
Yeah, the second was, what challenges have you had to manage because of C-19?
So for me personally, a challenge that I had to deal with was just my mental health, because it really has taken a toll with everything that's been going on. And I just needed to try to find help within myself and just find the happiness again that I had before this whole thing started.
Thank you.
I can go after that. I think the biggest impact is really just having to slow down a lot. Usually a lot of us are always on the go and doing things nonstop. So I think just having that setback of not being able to do what we want when we want because of the quarantine and everything like that, that's been the biggest thing I can say. Just as far as just something, a challenge that I've been having to manage during COVID-19 is probably just staying productive and keeping my mental and my mind going, and not really, slowing down and kind of being lazy because of this. It's been very easy just to sit around and not do anything during this time. So I think the challenge is definitely just finding new ways to stay creative and stay, productive throughout each day and things like that. So yeah, that's what I can say about this whole COVID-19 situation.
Thank you.
I'll take over. This pandemic has affected a lot of people financially, but my family's been blessed. Both of my parents have been able to stay and work. I think it's affected me most mentally. At first I enjoyed it because it felt like an early summer vacation, but then it started to feel a little monotonous. Every day seemed to be the same. So I think my biggest challenge has been trying to manage unstructured time. Before it was more simple. I go to school for 7 hours a day, come home, do homework, do whatever. Now it's like all of this free time you have to figure out, you start to realize like, wow, I actually, I wanted this opportunity to have this much time, unstructured time ever again. So how can I use it to be the most productive? What can I do with this time? So that's been the biggest thing that I've been struggling with during quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
Wait.
You can go ahead.
Kind of my biggest struggle is that both of my parents parents are in the music industry. They're both musicians for the St. Louis Symphony. And of course, you know, nobody's gonna go to concerts. So they were both like, they weren't fired, they were just like put out of their jobs. And when I was applying to colleges, I got into my dream school, which is University of Maryland, and it's like incredibly hard to get into, and I got a scholarship too, but unfortunately I wasn't able to go because both my parents didn't really have any sort of income, so that was pretty hard. But I've been like kind of now I've been pretty active in the whole entire Black Lives Matter movement, which has been really great. It's been a really amazing experience. So my take.
Ashley, I see you're speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For me personally, not only has it been adjusting to a complete new way of life, and you have to remember to wear a mask outside, and you have to stay 6 feet away from people, but just in general, like for schooling, it's, to me personally, it's a whole new way of school and how things operate. Like I've never heard of a hybrid school day before, where you go one day and then you don't another day. It's just been different for me personally because I'm a very outgoing person. I'm an extrovert, so it's kind of taken a toll on me in the sense that I can't really spend time with my friends. And then it's kind of differentiating between telling myself social distancing does not mean isolation. So
Yeah.
that's basically it for me.
Thank you. Clarissa?
Yeah, I think COVID-19 has like exacerbated a little bit of like the distrust that exists within the Latino community with like the healthcare system. I think a lot of it comes from not knowing, but then also a lot of it comes from just like past bad experiences, right? So I've heard of like distant family members like, you know, aren't feeling too well, and then like their fear of going to the hospital, like not being treated right, or you know, or like going there, like not coming back out, right, because they're not gonna get the treatment that they necessarily like need. So I think that's one thing that COVID-19 has done that has been a challenge, kind of like mentally. And something else I would say, shortly after my college like went online, we had like all come back home after spring break, or during spring break actually. Also my little brother, his school also, you know, after spring break they didn't go back either. And I think that was a challenge to me because since my parents, they both immigrated from Mexico, so they don't really have all of the, I guess, knowledge of like the English language and like of the things that they learn here in school, right? The way that they learn it, to like be able to like effectively help my little brother here at home. So the challenge was me trying to do my schoolwork and my exams in a somewhat noisy household, but also trying to help my little brother understand his school material, which definitely was a challenge.
Thank you, Clarissa.
I think personally for me, in a weird way, this has been like great for my mental health because I've gotten to really reflect on myself and like find my happiness, and also build a closer relationship with my mom because she's been home. She works for us, but has been home working, and I've gotten to like spend some quality time. And then also during the whole Black Lives Matter movement, I've made t-shirts and like gone out to protest. So I've got to, oh, yay!
Yay!
I've gotten to like exercise like different ways of like my talents and abilities. Oh, yay! In great ways. So I don't know. It's been like actually kind of a good thing for me in a way.
Thank you so much. So, you know, yeah, a lot of us went on spring break and never came back for school. And Cynthia and I also work at Washington University at the Graduate School for Social Work and Public Health, the Brown School, and social policy. So we understood what it meant as well to go on spring break, and then and from there we went to remote operations and remote learning. And then in the midst of a global health crisis, another crisis, it was always here, and it was just in the background. It's you know, the pandemic of racism is like a chronic illness that's sort of always creating disparities and vulnerability, and for different populations, particularly for Black and brown people. So then we saw, not only was the data showing us that people of color were disproportionately impacted by the health disparities and by the disease and by death, but then in the midst of all of this, we had the murder of George Floyd. And I just want to ask you, what was your response when you learned about the death of George Floyd and then the global demonstrations against police brutality and the global demonstrations in solidarity with Black lives? What was your response?
For me, my response to the George Floyd's death was at first like, I didn't really want to see it because it can really put an imprint on your mind and just really mess you up. But then when it really blew up, I was very like interested. I'm like, well, I need to be aware of something like this because it's a part of what we go through. And so when I witnessed the video, it was very just heartbreaking that a police officer felt the need to put their knee on a person's neck. And even though they said that they can't breathe and calling out for their mama, it's like they showed no remorse. And so it was very difficult and I know that it touched different people's hearts in different ways. And the global pandemic and the global demonstration actually of police brutality and Black Lives Matter, it made people have to like go deep within themselves to figure out what exactly are they like with? Are they with this movement or not? And do you want to speak out to it or be quiet? And so you really have to do some internal just investigation on what is my stance on this whole thing.
Kind of my first reaction was I was so angry because like some people were saying that like he was just doing his job, like the officer, how he was just like doing his job. Like, no, it was obviously personal. Like, you don't put your knee on somebody's neck for almost 9 minutes who's screaming for mercy. Like it's personal, and it was disgusting. And when protests finally started going out and I started attending them with my friends, I realized like the news completely messes up the protests, because I went to a downtown riot and a fluorescent riot. Didn't know it was going to be a riot. I didn't participate in any rioting or anything, but you know, I didn't feel unsafe or like my life was on the line until SWAT came out, because there was this moment where I didn't have my phone on me, everybody ran, and I was just by myself in a line of a SWAT team all holding rifles at me. And I know that there would be no situation where I would ever have like some sort of weapon pointed at me. And it was just disgusting to see how like one death can impact so many and the government not do anything about it or continue to not do anything about it.
When I first was aware about the situation, coming from my high school was Westminster and it's predominantly Caucasian. I was like, I was in school when Mike Brown happened and young, so didn't really know what to do. And this time I was like, no, I am going to do something because enough is enough. And I need to educate my Caucasian peers who call themselves my friend, because you can't be my friend and not see that I'm Black. And I think a lot of times going to school, I felt that way. So I was like, there has to be something to make a change from this situation. So I was in a like standstill at first, kind of like what to do and how am I gonna do that? And it's gonna be hard because I'm gonna have to cut some people out of my life, but realize that it's okay, because if they can't see me for who I am and understand that this situation is horrible, then like I don't want you in my life in the first place. So I then created t-shirts it didn't have to say Black Lives Matter, but some of them said love over hate or equality, to show like you stand with me, and you may not be able to understand it, but at least like you can participate and know that like you donating for the shirt and you wearing it is like standing behind every African-American person. And also I'm donating the money to different organizations to be a change. So yeah.
My initial response was the same as Z's, actually. I refused to watch the video. I actually refused to even read the story about it because I'm just thinking like, oh, here we go again. Because, you know, I was doing good with quarantine, trying to focus on myself and things, and then it just came along. So, but then when I finally did watch the video, I couldn't stop watching it because I couldn't process what I was seeing, you know? It's so obvious that this is not normal, right? And we can't pretend like it's normal. So it made me think about what you'd expect, you know, the state of our justice system, our police system. But then I started to think about the role the media plays in society and on our individual lives, and how much we rely on the media for trustworthy information, and how much we trust them, and how untrustworthy they can be. You know, like all 50 states plus 18 countries protesting, that wouldn't be possible without the media. But it's also the media who has skewed this situation to make it look like something is not, you know. So, you know, it made me realize that we need more than just police reform. We need more than reforming the criminal justice system. We also need to reform the media, right? So that was my take on it, you know, at first.
And I can definitely say, every time something happens like this, like I definitely vividly remember when Mike Brown was killed, and even when Trayvon was killed. When things happen like this, it's always a moment where, you know, I'm thinking like, why did this happen? And it's just like a standstill moment. So in the first initial response, it's probably just a standstill moment for myself. After that, it's like, okay, so now what's going to come of this? How are we going to make changes and make things happen so that, you know, this person that was killed senselessly with the whole world watching, you know, how are we going to change things and make things happen? And I think that's what really, you know, came about. And then when all these global demonstrations and protests and things like that happened, I think it was really just the fact that, you know, like the officer having his knee on George's neck for almost 9 minutes, like it was just vivid as daylight, because he really, there was no reason for him to do that. There was just no reason for that. George was not, you know, he was complying. He wasn't doing anything wrong. And for you to have your knee on his neck for that long of time with the whole world watching, I think that really just put something in people like, okay, yeah, this is not right. You know, these things have been going on, but, you know, for some people, this was the moment that really, you know, made them aware and really made them see like, okay, yeah, this is not right. And this is far too much, and this is too much going on. Now we need to all come together and make a change. So it's been amazing to see everybody coming together, you know, of all colors, backgrounds, and it's just different places coming together to really stand for something more than themselves, and really stand up for what's right. So yeah, that's what I can say.
Yeah, when I first saw the video, I was absolutely horrified. There's something so different, so real of like seeing the whole thing play out versus like hearing about it, reading about it, which is still very horrible, right? But something just kind of like, I've heard this metaphor, you're still like watching like a train wreck, like it's like something really terrible, but like you like can't seem to turn around. And that was like me when I got the video sent to me by my sister. I was looking at it and I just couldn't seem to take my eyes off the screen. It was absolutely enraging, and I was just like at a loss for words. And so soon after, like right as the video ended, I started showing my mom and my dad, trying to talk about it in my home, right? And I think like all of us were just like really overwhelmed with emotion. So it kind of just like took a couple of days to kind of just like fully process it more. And like even then, it's really hard to process something like that. And then after a couple of days, I just started feeling the need to do something, apart from just sharing, apart from telling people like, have you seen this? After that, I was like, that's not enough. More needs to be done, right? You can't just like, I'll be like, have you seen this? That's horrible. Okay, like let's move on. But it was this like dire need to do something beyond that. And yeah, going back to how you're like, all of you are saying how like the media really kind of like skews how like the reality of things. That's like one of the main reasons why I haven't been able to go out and like physically protest, because my parents, they see the media and they're like, those are like really dangerous. Not only can you like catch COVID-19, but you can like get hurt. You're not going. And so that's like really frustrating for me, like knowing like, no, I've seen the other side too. I know that these a lot of them are peaceful, a lot of them are safe, you know, and they're like a really powerful thing. But so, you know, just accepting that and like moving on. So like just like going on to like posting on Instagram, following a lot more Black voices that I honestly did not have on my Instagram a lot of. I think a lot of things that are recommended to us more are like, you know, predominantly white people on our Instagram feed that look a certain way, that speak a certain way, that think a certain way. And so I think just being mindful of that, to who am I listening to, and kind of how are they influencing the way that I see the world and the way that I see others. And then this wonderful training I shared with me from El Paso Institute, an anti-racism training, and I went on and did that. And that was just absolutely amazing. I don't know if that's going to be available again this year or if it's until next year. It's the anti-racism training on El Paso Institute. It was virtual this year, and it was just super informative. And I think that kind of helped keep the momentum going of like me wanting to like learn more and educate myself and then educate others too.
When I initially saw the video, well, to start, I didn't want to watch it, like most have said. I kind of woke up one morning and I saw it on my Instagram timeline, and I was just like, I am not watching that at all. And it just kept popping up, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna look at it. And when I first saw it, I can say it really affected me, and I was really hurt because you could tell that not only was he begging for help and asking for mercy, you know, you could tell not only was it personal, but it just, I don't know, it just affected me because I was like, this continues to happen. And no one seems to be doing much of anything. As I saw the protests begin to happen, I was like, okay, this is starting to pick up. But I was extremely shocked to find out that it was spreading internationally, globally. Everyone, several countries, not just the United States, or several states in general, because even with the death of Mike Brown, I don't really remember seeing many other states even participating in any protests. So it just gave me a glimpse of hope to see other people and actually taking part in trying to push forward change. Because once more people start to get involved, to me personally, it makes it more prominent to the people that need to be woken up about the issue.
If there are no other comments, I'd like to jump in with the question. Black Lives Matter has come up in the conversation a few times. And the reality is that Black Lives Matter has become the rally and cry of the current civil rights movement. And it is being embraced across the world. So I want to ask each of you, what does the phrase Black Lives Matter mean to you?
Well, once again, for me, Black Lives Matter means that we are beautiful, we are intelligent, we are excellent, driven, unflinching, determined. Not saying that I'm better than you or more important than you, but that whatever I do needs to be at some type of like equalness. That my skin shouldn't determine what I can and can't do because of what your prejudices and biases say that we can't do. So no matter what is going on, I am unapologetically Black, and that will never change.
Well, I can say it's not being afraid to, you know, love the skin that I'm in, and not being afraid to be able to, you know, go each day and be the best version of myself, and be great each and every day, and just, you know, continuing to live the life that I'm living, the great life that I'm living, and doing all the right things. But I think really just like the first thing I said, I think it's just not being afraid to live in the skin that I am, that I'm in. I think that's very important, especially for a lot of people younger than us. They see everything that's going on and whatnot, and, you know, especially with social media being big now, how it is, and the internet, and everybody pretty much having access to it. When you're young and you see all that going on, it can be very hard to, understand why, you know, people with the same skin color as you are dying each day from senseless crimes. So I think just not being afraid to, you know, love the skin that I'm in and live in the skin that I am in is the biggest thing for me.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you can go.
Okay. I was going to say the Black Lives Matter movement, I don't see it as anything other than a continuation of the civil rights movement. They're both crusades advocating for the most simple and basic things, you know. Civil rights just means the rights of citizens to social freedom and equality. You know, they weren't fighting for economic equality. They weren't fighting for equal access to healthcare. They were fighting for the most basic liberties, such as the right to vote, the right to worship, the right to speak freely. Black Lives Matter is the exact same thing. It's not Black lives are necessary. It's not Black lives are vital. It's not Black lives are valuable. It's they matter, right? And it's not Black businesses matter. It's not Black dollars matter. It's not Black families matter. It's Black lives matter. You know, it's the bare minimum, and yet you still have people who are refusing to acknowledge that. So.
For me, what Black Lives Matter is, it means, like, you know, it shouldn't really be like a negotiable kind of topic. Like, it should be kind of obvious nowadays that, like, Black lives matter. Black lives are vital for this country's growth. And, you know, like, it really does make me mad whenever I see, like, Black Lives Matter kind of, like, being treated as, like, you know, a trend or, like, kind of a more political stance. Like, it should be something that comes from your heart. It should be something that, like, you know, like, some white people will be like, oh, I have a Black friend, so I'm not racist, but I'm just like, you still treat it as a trend. Like, you need to care about it as much as everybody else does, because in my opinion, like, you know, white people messed up this country, like, long enough. Like, it needs to be kind of their responsibility to make it better and to actually, like, make the changes that are needed in order for Black people to feel more safe and not feel like their life is always on the line because of the color of their skin.
To me, Black Lives Matter means that Black lives have historically not mattered to a lot of people, and that is clear in the history books and even outside of the history books and institutions that we see around us, right? And so Black Lives Matter to me is a movement calling for people to wake up, to realize that Black Lives Matter. And further than just realizing it, accepting it, embracing it, living by it, and allowing for that to affect the way they treat other people, right? I think a lot of people, when they're like, oh, all lives matter, like, they feel threatened, right, by the fact that Black lives matter. I think a really good way that a friend explained it to me once was, like, if you have, like, you know, houses on a block, one of them is on fire, which is like Black lives, right, being constantly, you know, oppressed, treated horribly. The firefighters aren't going to come and be like, let's just, like, water every single house, right, because all houses matter. They're going to go right to the one that is burning in flames. They're going to go to that house first and give them the most treatment possible so they can be a safe, healthy house, right? So yeah, that's what Black Lives Matter means to me.
To me, Black Lives Matter. Oh, no, you can go. Are you sure? Okay. To me, Black Lives Matter is just, simply put, literally to me, it is my life should be valued as equally as any white person my age or any person of any other race that is my age, because, or anyone in general, you know, but I feel like, as was said before me, historically, Black lives have not mattered. And so Black Lives Matter is a movement that is supposed to push essentially what I said. I'm sorry. Black Lives Matter. I mean, oh goodness.
To me, Black Lives Matter means that my Blackness is beautiful, and that I essentially, hopefully going forward, we're not gonna, I mean, there's still gonna be problems, but you're gonna see me at the same playing field. And it's not gonna be, I'm giving an opportunity because you're trying to meet a quota. It's not because I'm giving an opportunity for this, that, whatever. It's because you see my Blackness and you're like, wow, I'm proud, like, wow.
Mhm.
So I want to ask the panelists, and you don't all have to answer each time, but I like that you are. I appreciate that you are. Yeah, you know, when I think about Black Lives Matter, my background is social work and policy. And so I am always thinking about the historical policies that have created systemic racism and oppression. And that even in 2020, Black lives, our lives can be predicted. Our life outcomes can be predicted because we are born Black. And that's just incredible to me, that in a country that the values and the principles that, you know, we're founded on, that we still live in a society where by design, by structure, Black lives experience more oppression and more disparity, and the policies have to change. But I want to ask you all, what changes have you noticed since the surge, this recent surge of civil rights, that could mean change for the future?
A big one that I've noticed is that even though I don't necessarily like how Black Lives Matter is kind of treated as a trend, I'm way more happy that like a lot of, you know, really big like Hollywood celebrities are like, oh, you know, Black Lives Matter, racism isn't okay, rather than like, you know, it being like a cool thing to like be racist, like kind of back during when the civil rights movement first really blew up. So I'm kind of glad that it's more like cool to be considered like woke or to be considered like not racist, but also kind of the fact that, you know, even though like peaceful protest has gotten us places, there's really been a lot of changes being made, like even the little things whenever it comes to rioting. So even though like I don't necessarily participate in riots, like if the government knows now that, you know, if innocent Black lives are being taken from us like every single day, there are going to be riots. You're going to have to use government money in order to fix all of that because of a mistake that you made. So hopefully, if they know that like this is kind of shifting over to be the new norm, hopefully they'll want to change that, because I've always heard that once you tamper with the white man's money, they get pretty mad.
I love that there's been like threads of different Black corporations to go to, and it has really opened the eyes for us to go and put our money towards these corporations, different restaurants and clothing stores and just different things, because a lot of them I was unaware, even in St. Louis, like, whoa, I need to go check these out. And during this time, I have been able to go to different restaurants around the community and support Black businesses. And that's been really cool to have everyone come together and like make these threads of different places to educate everyone, because it's not like publicized or educated, you know? So I think that's been awesome.
Going off of that, yeah, I would totally agree. I think especially within like so I do like try and follow like sustainability pages, stuff like that, you know, just trying to help Mama Earth a little more and trying to like be healthier for ourselves and stuff. And I realized people that we see at the front of the movement seem to all be white, and like, why is that, right? So I think from this, like a lot of people that I had previously followed were just, you know, posting more like, hey, check these people out, and I'm checking them out, and I'm like, these people are amazing. Like, how did I not know about them, right? So I think, yeah, just like the increased awareness of these beautiful Black Instagram pages, Black businesses that we can just support more, right? That are equally as good, if not better than the ones we already did.
I mean, like at these protests, it really is cool seeing how like a lot of white people like do step up to be on the front lines, because like I'm one of the frontliners, and like I have countless videos of just police officers brutally arresting a lot of the people on the front lines, and like I've been like coated in mace just so many times, and it hurts. It like burned my arm for near like 5 hours, and like it even though, like, you know, obviously I don't enjoy mace, I don't enjoy like almost getting arrested, like it does feel good knowing that like a lot of my Black friends who are there behind me, it feels good knowing that, like, you know, they don't have to go through that. Even though it's a short moment of time, they don't have to go through that for that short moment of time, because like they're put through that so much more than white people. And it took me like having to scream at an officer's face for me to get maced and almost arrested. But like even at a traffic stop, like Black people can fear for their lives. So it's just, I don't know, it kind of makes me happy seeing that like a lot of my white friends will kind of like join me up there. Feels good.
I'd like to shift the question a bit. I have to tell you that as a grandmother, I am very emotional that you young people have had to experience what my parents and I have experienced. But you give me hope. I hear the wisdom.
That's okay. You're inspiring us, Cynthia. We can be inspired.
I hear your wisdom. Thank you, Tia. I see your courage. And so I feel this question. I'd like to know, what role do you see for yourself in the movement to eliminate racism? What role do you see for yourself in the movement to eliminate racism?
Well, for me, once again, eliminate racism is such a heavy word because, to be honest, it's going to take way longer than our generation to even reach any point where we have racial equality and equity. But for me, I just feel that as a young person, I really have to try from now till I am old to get all of us on board and to be that stepping stone for our generation after us. And then while I am old enough to make bigger decisions, I will use the knowledge that I have gained from all these years to be in a position of power. Like, I've always been told that I need to be in some type of, I don't know, political role. And I'm just like, hey, I mean, I could, but it's just like, it's a lot of pressure. But sometimes you need to have that pressure to make those changes. You need
That's true.
to be able to withstand the people that don't like you. Because there's going to be people that don't like you regardless. And I'd rather be in that position and make true impact and change than to sit back and just watch it happen. So that's the role that I plan to do for our generation and generations after that.
I can say, I can say, my role, I think, is really just using my voice. I think a lot of us, you know, we don't realize how much power our voice has, but over time I've learned that, you know, my voice is very powerful and can be used as a weapon when it comes to things, and just, you know, inspiring people, motivating people, but also, you know, educating people as well. So just being there on the front lines, no matter, even if it's not in a spot of, you know, being a politician or being, you know, a lawyer, things like that, but everybody in their own right is an activist. But you just have to figure out your role when it comes to that activism. So yeah, my voice, I feel, is a very strong tool, and it has been a very strong tool, not only in just, you know, activism, but just other things as well. But yeah, just being on that front line, no matter what, even if it's not being out at every protest and things like that, but even some of the most powerful people are doing a lot behind the scenes. You know, you have your people that, you know, can be out each and every day, just like, you know, Eden has been, you know, each and every day, being on that front line out in the protest. But then you also need those people in the background that are also making things happen, and you know, and doing things like that. So you know, it's a lot, but I think for me, it's definitely just using my voice, whether that's out there at the protests or, you know, behind the scenes and making a change happen.
For me, kind of the role that I want to continue to grow in is like just being the best ally that I can, and like learning from people, learning from websites, just learning as much as I can, because since I've been going to these protests, I have learned way more in like 2 or 3 protests than I have in all of the articles that like I've read. And like I've learned a lot more from like protest experience, and also like being on the front lines, like although that's not meant for everybody, like I am fine with being maced, even though it's bad, it's not that bad. Like I've been tear gassed, I've been almost arrested, like even like though that is really scary, like I also know that there's so many different roles, kind of like how Caleb was saying, like more like in the back, like we value the medics so much, and like we value everybody who like helps de-arrest people, like, you know, like if somebody's wearing a backpack and like they're about to get arrested, like people will like yank their backpack back, and like I don't know, I just feel like there's like so many different roles, and like everybody is just so valuable in this type of movement. It's just like, it's really beautiful to see.
Personally, see myself in a role behind the scenes. Right now, I'm working on a book. It's about practical steps that every Black, brown, even white person can take to ensure their social and economic prosperity. We live in a time where the worst people among us are our leaders. So I feel like we have to get rid of this illusion that we need a savior to come along and help us when we can help ourselves. So the book contains rules such as don't have children until you're married. Now the norms are changing around marriage, so I'm thinking about changing it to don't have children until you can promise them both parents. You know, and which if every person did, it would completely solve the issue of fatherless households, which is the root of numerous problems that we see. So yeah, I personally see myself kind of in the long game, you know, because I feel like this is a problem that we have to look at both externally and internally.
The role that I see for myself is continuing to educate myself and others, particularly my family. I think in the Latino community, it's often overlooked that there are a lot of implicit biases and a lot of prejudices that exist against people of color with darker skin, right? Against Black people, and even Latinos within our own community that do have darker skin, you know? And a lot of things I think are normalized and aren't like said with like malice or harm intended, but I think that really does influence the way that like a lot of people like in my family think, right? So I think that's something that I'm putting myself up to the jobs to do that I don't think is an option at this point. And I am very hopeful for how it will go, but also do know it's not going to be an easy thing to change people like hard set way of thinking. But yeah, and then also for the future, just to bring this mentality and this growing mentality to whatever career it is that I do step into, because ultimately that will impact how other people are.
If it's okay, I have a question, and my question actually relates to one of our guests here today, Ryan Smith. He asked, he wanted to say, what would it take for us adults to create, to prompt you all as young leaders to continue to strengthen your leadership, to grow into your leadership, and to stay here in St. Louis? And my question is similar in that how can adults support youth leadership right now and youth voice? And what can we do to keep you here so that you will be our next leaders?
Trusting us that we know what we're doing. Kind of that, because like a lot of my white friends are just like, oh well, I can't protest because my mom won't let me. She thinks that I'm gonna do something wrong or something like that. And I'm just like, but you can sneak out and go to a party. Okay, but kind of like if your kid wants to protest, you know, like let them protest. Like the worst thing that's happened to me is that I get mazed and I spend a night in jail, which honestly, it's not the end of the world, but just like kind of trusting your kid, you know, encouraging them and like educating them about all of the roles that you can take during these protests, like, you know, possibly like training to be a medic, or like training, or like being one of the drivers to like help drive people out of the area. There's so many different roles, but kind of just like educating your child, you know, if they really do feel a call to these protests, like let them.
I think that a role, or the way that adults should support us, is to really help us behind the scenes in our mental, because some of these things can be really just challenging on our just psyche and just our energy. And sometimes we just need to step back and just be that daughter for our mom, or be that son for our father. Like, we really just need you guys to be there for us so that we don't fall apart. Like, we really need that self-care to just build us up, and it'll just make the fight that much easier to do when we know that we have our parents by our side helping us the whole way.
And I can say definitely just giving us your wisdom, because you know, as youth, we're gonna bring all the energy that we have in us. We're gonna bring that energy, and me being out in the protests that I went to and everything like that, I see it. Oh yeah, we have all the energy that we need, and we're gonna bring it out each and every time we're out there on the front line or whatever we're doing. We're gonna bring that energy. So I think the big thing for, you know, the older generations, just giving us your wisdom, giving us, you know, the knowledge that you have for how things were back then, and then, you know, giving us that wisdom and knowledge and everything, and then us being able to translate that into today's world and what's going on, because obviously times have definitely changed. So some things, you know, some changes have to be made, but the principle of things is still pretty much the same. So I just think your wisdom and knowledge is a very, you know, a strong thing that, you know, a lot of us can use and, you know, then translate to how, you know, we're doing things now as young people. So I would say that.
Yeah, also I'd say 3 really good things, just to like kind of make it more concise, are open up, listen, and be willing to engage in conversation. I think a lot of our parents have experienced, even like indirectly or directly, however it is, racism in some way, whether that's them seeing a friend do it to someone else, or whether that's experiencing it themselves. And I think a lot of adults, like with time, I've seen like lock those things up and they don't talk about it, and they just kind of like go with like the norm, and they just like do everything they can to kind of like avoid those conversations. But I'd say just like open up, listen to what your daughter, son is saying, and be willing to engage in conversation, because that's the only way we're going to see change.
I think one of the most important things that adults need to do is, number one, is listen. Yeah, I'm gonna repeat that, because just because you've been on the earth a little while longer doesn't mean that we can see reality, that we don't see reality for what it is, you know. So that's number one. Number two is to educate us, inform us, prime us, and prepare us, because within the next decade or two, we're going to be your next presidents, politicians, workers. We're going to be the parents of your grandchildren. We need y'all to help us make sure that we don't have another generation of uneducated and ignorant adults. So.
We have a comment from Brandy in the chat, and I'd like for you guys to listen to her reflection. And that is, she goes to a predominantly white institution, and she feels as though when she is there, she has to continuously justify her seat at the table. And even when she works through that, other groups say the right words, but she feels as though she still gets the looks and the treatment as if she still really doesn't belong. And her reflection is, it's hard to explain, but it is so real, and it is a constant struggle. How would you speak to that?
Honestly, like, as a white person who did go to a predominantly white institution, just my advice to you is that know that you are beautiful. Nothing that you are doing is wrong. What you are doing is perfectly normal, and hopefully in the future that will be the new normal, that you don't get any looks, that you don't get any like empty words. But just know that there are people out there, once you get out of that specific setting, you will honestly flourish so much. And just remind yourself like how beautiful you are, how intelligent you are, how much value that you do have.
You know what my advice is?
Well, go ahead, Z.
My advice is, don't worry about what people are saying. You don't have nobody to impress. to be honest. Like, if you're religious, the only person you really need to impress is God. That's just me. But you have to, in order to be in a line like this, you have to have thick skin. You have to have a heart that is full of loving, but you also have to protect it at the same time. You can't be flinched by things that people say or do. I went to a predominantly like white school would do. And so I had to really learn, how can I necessarily just be me, still be Black, but then I'm kind of an adapter to my environment, and I want to just be what they are, but sometimes you just really have to do you. You have to just worry about what your stance is and continue to just stay true to yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like you got to do two things. Number one, you have to understand that has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with the attitudes and mindsets that they've adopted or that have been conditioned into them, right? It has nothing to do with you. Number two, you got to forgive them, because you got to understand that also is not completely their fault. They're growing up in an environment, maybe a household, maybe an education system, where, they weren't born this way. They weren't born looking at you this way. None of that, These are mindsets that have been pushed into them by their parents, by their schools, by, the pop culture that they witness, that they consume.
Thank you. Ashley, you and I have talked about this very subject. Can you share how you've worked through this situation?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. I was just thinking about how I could answer this question, and I do go to a predominantly white school. So in my experience, I have been judged and called and alluded to. People have essentially called me like the stereotype of being an angry Black girl. I've been told this basically by my teachers, the people around me, my peers. And at one point it did kind of quiet my voice, and I didn't want to speak about things that bothered me, and I didn't want to say anything. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you having security in yourself and knowing that regardless of what other people think about you, you know who you are, and whether they feel a certain way about the way you present yourself, or the Blackness that you have, or the Blackness that I have, I just have come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter what other people think about you as long as you know who you are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This conversation could go on for a long time, but it is 4 o'clock, and we want to be mindful that we're going to wrap it up, unfortunately, because I want to hear I have so many more questions for these young people. I really do. But I do want to say that I know it's sunny outside, and I also literally just heard a thunder rumbling. And I love it because someone put in the chat, like, the perfect storm right now is the civil rights movement, is the mix of elders' wisdom, what Caleb was talking about, but the energy of the youth. And someone else put in the chat that this is a fiery, energetic, and dynamic group of young people. I want to echo those comments, because we want your energy. We want your, I think we have a shared wisdom. Our experiences, when you said listen and be in conversation with each other, I want all of you in partnership and friendship and collaboration as change makers, as agents of change, as people who are living a different experience and see a different future for us and are helping to shape and influence that future. And so I'm very excited for all the young people who join us today. I cannot say thank you enough for making time, for being so candid, and being really wise in your youth. And so, Cynthia, if there's anything you'd like to say before we wrap it up.
Just want to say thank you to everyone. And thank you for the hope and the wisdom that I got today. I mean, I will remember this conversation for quite some time. I'd also like to acknowledge my granddaughter, Ashley Johnson Jones. Thank you so much for saying yes to your Nana. Would you like to acknowledge your son, Atia?
Oh, yes. Full transparency. Omar Thurman is my son. I'm very proud of him, but I'm also really proud of everyone here today. I know all of these young people in small ways. I hope to get to know you in much bigger ways. I hope to see you continue to lead us, lead in your region, lead in the spaces where you are now, grow in your strengths. All of you bring such incredible strengths. I know our audience doesn't know you the way some of us know you, but that's okay, because I do feel like I'm going to see many of you, you know, grow in your strengths and continue to lead us, and we appreciate that. I want to thank the audience. A lot of people have to go. I know you're signing off because you have other commitments. I want to thank everyone who joined us for this conversation, who came into this circle to listen to youth voice and youth leadership. I would also like to encourage you all to join us again for number 8 in the series, and that's going to be on August 4th. I think that's right, August 4th. We're going to talk about the high price of economic injustice. So continue to stay tuned for the COVID-19 and race series, and we're going to sign off with a great big virtual hug. Really, if I could hug all these young people, I would. I'm sorry I can't hug you, but I do love you, so thank you so much.
Have a good evening.